saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the view of Wolfpack Research or any of its officers. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on this program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. We are not investment advisors. We hold no registrations with the SEC, FINRA, or any other regulatory agency, and none of the opinions expressed on this podcast should be considered investment advice. The listener should assume that we have positions in and stand to benefit from any stock or other security mentioned on this podcast. Do your own research before making investment decisions.
Barry, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Look at you, Barry. Always in shape. Always in shape, this guy.
It's a prison thing.
So you always being in shape is a prison thing.
It's a routine. Yeah, I had a good friend of me say to me, okay, Barry, you seem to do prison well. It's outside that you have trouble. So why don't you take prison with you minus the institutionalization? So I followed his advice.
Yeah, well, that sounds like good advice.
Listen, I saw your back in that Ving Rhames movie. You had a nice spread, it
was not a Ving Rhames.
Oh man, I was on Oxy back then, so now a little different now. Yeah, I was a little drugged out back then, but yeah, thank you though, thank you.
Listen to this guy saying it was a Ving Rhames movie. It was a movie about you, and Ving Rhames was in it.
Yeah, the movie with Ving Rhames.
Yeah, right? No, he was actually a good guy too, really good guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. You know, I guess we're on the movie right now, and I'll go back and record an intro later. I don't know if you've heard my shows, but there generally is one. There were some really interesting people that were in that movie, the one movie I saw anyway. I mean, Luke Skywalker was your dad.
Yeah.
And
Mark Hamill, yeah.
Talia Shire was your mother.
Mm-hmm.
So we had, what is her name?
And Jimmy Kahn was in there.
James Kahn. Yeah, no, she was Adrienne.
Yeah, Talia Shire.
Talia Shire was in it. James Kahn was in it, and then they were playing around the guy who was also the one he beat up in, The Godfather.
Carlo?
with the trash can, the brother.
Yeah.
So they reenact. They were just joking around, and Jimmy Kahn ran with an empty trash can at him, and it was kind of funny. They had fun.
He still got it back in 2018, huh?
Well, it was filmed in 2009.
Oh, 2009. Oh, that makes more sense. He looks
better
than I thought he would.
Yeah, long time ago. Yeah, 2009.
So, look, for those of you who are just joining the conversation that I was, starting with Barry Minkow, Barry needs almost no introduction. If you're in my world, and if you're listening to this show, you're probably in my world. My day job is exposing frauds and short selling and being an activist short. We occasionally speak to political celebrities and actual celebrities, and then, I don't know, Barry. I mean, where you are today, but like if somebody said you were a criminal mastermind, I wouldn't argue with them. You've done some really audacious things that take a set of cojones, man. I mean, where did this come from?
And starting at 16, by the way. I mean,
well,
listen, you two can't tag team me like that. Come on.
Oh, you know how often we hear that?
We're already doing the prison thing.
We've almost never heard that from anybody
ever.
So no, two-time loser.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
I mean, you asked me how I would describe it. I get right to the point. Two-time loser, twice convicted of securities fraud, tax fraud, so on. Different situations, different contexts, but interesting. The Miami judge in the second case, the Lennar insider trading case, her Judge Seitz in Miami, outstanding lady. She even checked up on me in prison with my counselor like years later to make sure I was doing okay. She said in court, she was very complimentary about the frauds we had uncovered, but she also said that I know that if you're out for 15 years with the feds, which is true technically, you're a first-time offender, meaning they can't use, you lose the first strike, right? Mm-hmm. If you have I was out, I got indicted the 16th year. So she goes, but I know you're not a first-time offender, Mr. Minkow, even though you're technically a first-time offender in front of this courtroom, you're a two-time loser. I said, at least, Your Honor, at least.
Well, at least a two-time look, I want to go back to the start as easy as you best, but I do want to point out that, like, everybody would say, I think your critics would say, and I've studied a bit of this, that you just have that kind of personality where a judge will start to have a feeling about you and want to call and check on you in prison. And, I guess that's helped you in your life and has probably hurt you in your life if you've, left it unchecked. But it's just like, how many people that she sent to prison do you think she calls and checks on?
Well, it was in 2015, my counselor at Atwater had come to me, and I think probably at that time I was even close to being out of her jurisdiction in the San Diego case, tax fraud case, probably jurisdictionally took over. But no, to your point, I think in Judge Seitz, I certainly can't speak for her, but she made no apologies for being a Christian and how disappointed she was that I was a failed pastor, right? So I did insider trading, tax fraud, commingling funds, and uncovered, a bunch of fraud, 14 cases and so forth. She goes, that's like, you are two different people. And I like the person who uncovered fraud for free with the FBI and the SEC and had the success. But then you became this other person. You were living a double life, and you betrayed your faith. You betrayed your congregation. You betrayed your position of trust. You betrayed the Lord. And she said it, and she said it eloquently. And I think what she was saying is, and it was amazing because almost prophetic. She goes, listen, you're going to get out. And I got a letter from the SEC here. Rarely does the SEC push on an insider trading case and then send me a letter of 14 cases that you uncovered. It's a public record. You don't have to believe me. 14 cases, $1 billion, whatever it was we had uncovered. She goes, why don't you, be plenty of fraud when you get out. Little did she know social media, because this is 2011, July, when she's sentencing me, how prophetic those words were. She goes, you're going to get out. No matter what happens in San Diego was kind of up in the air at the time, you'll be out. And why don't you stay away from public companies and just use your talents to level the playing field for the investment community? You clearly have a talent to unearth, private investment fraud. Stick to that. Do some good. Keep it moving. Stay away from public companies because you can't handle the temptation.
I think she gave you some really good advice.
She did. She was a doll.
And you know what? Yeah, I think it was extremely timely advice, given the private equity fraud happening right now. That's certainly something we can get to, if that's what you're working on these days.
But I think what you said, well, listen, your work was very motivational to me, as far as I'm concerned, that what happened with China and the SPACs and just that whole body of work as depicted in the Netflix special was just amazing. And you are, and your team, and you're quick to give credit to others, which I appreciate. But you guys have really, shown how it could really benefit society by applying your knowledge, taking down just complete frauds, protecting the investment public. That's really where it's at. I was never able to do that in the public realm, but in the private investment fraud realm, and sure, we could talk about it later, but applaud, obviously look up to you guys and all the work Wolfpack has done.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And we continue to do that today because there's plenty of fraud here in the United States, or just, complete shitco companies. I'm, currently, as it is today, March 2nd, talking about you, B. Riley. But there are a lot of companies that will have our gaze on, and some of them will be related to private equity and banking. I think that's a problem. This is about you, though. And I think, one of the things you have is the ability to teach people. Because, look, you taught yourself, okay, first, you committed fraud, which was an amazing, audacious story in and of itself. And then you taught yourself how to catch it, all kinds of fraud in the hedge fund world, which is really opaque and really tough to do. But I think people want to know, and I don't know that we get this enough. You're 16 years old when you're committing your first white collar crime, right?
Yeah.
What did your stomach feel like? Do you remember the first time where you just like, this is crazy?
So interesting. Never forget it. Couldn't meet payroll. I was 16 in 11th grade. Mom and Vera were in the garage doing telephone soliciting for carpet cleaning and had a crew out. So during the day I was stuck in school, so I couldn't work until weekends and after school. and couldn't meet payroll. And there was a local liquor store that my sister and I grew up on. You're talking in the 70s in Reseda, California. Mm-hmm. Our summers were spent walking to this liquor store, getting ice cream or candy, whatever we can get. Mm-hmm. The owner was an amazing guy. His name was Ben. And he loved us and was good to us. And when I started in business, they shut down my checking accounts because in California, you have to be 18 to sign on a legal binding contract. I was 16. They'd find out. I would dress up in a suit, try to fool them, but then they'd run the numbers eventually, although it took longer in the early 80s. Found out I wasn't 18. They shut the account down. So he just said, listen, I have a check cashing arm in my store here, as you can see. I'll just make money out of yours. Morning, you give me the checks. I'll cash them, turn them into money orders. I won't even charge you. So I'd bring customer checks. He'd turn them into money orders. Well, I was short, but I knew how to do the money orders. And it was back with a handle back in those days where you put the number and the handle.
It's like a machine that would imprint.
Not the spit out Western Union today.
No, you had a lever on the side. You'd have to put in the numbers and then pull the. Yeah, we've all done that. Go ahead.
We are old enough.
I'm 16, so I said I'll pull one from the bottom. By the time he gets to it, I'll pay it back. And that was the first lie. And I remember, and
that's what you had to do to yourself. You had to lie to yourself and tell you, look, I know it's wrong. I know I'm making a mistake, but I'm going to make it right because Ben cares about me and I care about him. So I have to make it right.
Right. And so you justify evil behavior because the ends justify the means. And I got to tell you something, when right equals forward motion and wrong is anything that gets in your way, and you have set up this cure that, I know this is wrong, but it's for a cause that you just don't understand. If you knew my story, you'd be like, I'll give you a pass on the money orders. You're 16, you're a great story, and you're inspiring a lot of people, all the lies. Thou shalt not deceive thyself is the 11th commandment. One thing I will note, the thing that made me, I didn't want to watch the recent Madoff thing, but I was on a long flight cross country. And it was worth watching for one thing. They talked about the 62 fraud where he was 30 grand behind, went to the father-in-law, got bailed out. Yeah. But one of the interviewees said something that was absolutely brilliant, worth the price of whatever. She said, at that point, he could be liar or failure. And that was me at Rick's Liquor in 1982, November. Because if I come out and said, listen, I'm not ready for this. I tried, I gave it a shot. I'm glad the news media covered me, but you know what? I'll come revisit this thing 4 years later. Failure, that's public. Everybody knows it, but they talk about you, but it's okay. Liar, nobody needs to know. I can make it through. The irony is when you choose liar, you end up getting both anyway. It's only a matter of time. But I thought that was a great insight because I chose liar many times and ended up with both. Right.
As eventually you do if you choose it one too many times, and then again it goes. That must have been kind of interesting. You're sitting in that plane seat watching this and just having that aha moment, right? Like, wow, this takes me way back.
Yeah, it did. It was very well done, very worth it because just for that, for me, because I run into so many people in today's world, we don't even need to get into it, but I'm going to tell you this. We will justify any action as long as we have that thing, that story, that great evil that we have to write, that great company that we have to say, hey, I'm meeting payroll for homes that have children. Come on, man. Right. Of course I'm going to lie on a bank loan application. I'm going to pay it back. Everybody does it. Nobody's going to get hurt. How many people, fudge a little bit on income, hide a few liabilities? Because all white collar crime is lying about what you owe and lying about what you earn when it comes right down to it.
Basically.
So so everybody does it. Nobody's going to get hurt. I have no intent. And it's for a greater cause. I mean, this is the mentality that I see today in other areas. And I'm like, that's our prison mentality right there, because all of us we're in federal prison. I mean, you're talking about, do you really think doctors, lawyers, accountants who are in federal prison went through all that schooling to end up in federal prison? Of course not. We came to a point in our lives where economic pressure caused us to make a decision that we rationalized and justified. And all of us had this, you ready? A cure. The one thing people don't know about the psychology of fraud is we want to sleep at night too. We want people to be proud of us. We really know what's going on. But if we have a cure, that thing that's going to pay everybody off. Rogue trader, it was worth seeing back in 95, still worth seeing. One good trading day away from cleaning up the billion at Barings PLC. Same with James Lewis. Same with me. Just get me to when I could sell my ZBest free trading stock. I pay off the mafia. I pay off the Ponzi. I go legit. It's all a lie because economic pressure comes again. I go back to fraud, but we don't know that. We all have a cure. We're not stupid. We want to sleep at night. So in every fraud I've ever involved myself in, there was this cure, that thing that was going to pay everybody off, make it right, so I could go legit. And that's the great lie.
Wow. Wow. That's a guy who spent some time thinking about it. And met
a lot of people too.
Yeah. And I guess it just kind of dawns on me that if you don't lift that first check from the bottom of Ben's cashier's checks, there's no ZZ Best.
No, it's over. Money, and they were money orders, and they were general money orders. I will never forget it.
Which is like cash. It's like cash.
No. It was a brand of money order at the time. Why would I remember a 1982 brand? You know, everybody, my wife, everybody was like, "Oh, you got a photographic memory." I said, "Well, that's both good and bad. You remember a lot of the bad stuff, like." Yeah. Certain things you shouldn't have watched on television or on your phone. Right. and you can remember some Bible verses here and there. Yeah. But what I do remember is the general money order that was a company he was dealing with.
Wow.
And they were from the bottom.
But they're cashable anywhere. I mean, you could just give it to somebody.
At that time, and there was no, remember, that was, you could kite checks back then. And what I mean by kiting is you had a 3-day float.
You did kite checks, as a matter of fact, a lot.
Yeah. It's a great way to inflate revenue, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I guess it was. And look, we haven't even gotten to the fact that, through this, that took you on to taking a company public by the age of 21. But even before that, you're like doing business with the mob to start your business or keep it going. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And were you conscious of that? And did you understand that when you were 16, 17, that, hey man,
no excuses. Absolutely. Really? So essentially what happened was it actually is two different. It's absolutely fascinating because my uncle called me. He was a huge, successful architect developer who wouldn't lend me. His own son said, "Dad, lend Barry money for his carpeting equipment for his business." He said no, but he was still a good guy. He probably saw the wisdom in not lending me money, I guess. But anyway, he was still my uncle. And he said, I will give you the contracts for the condos we built. So he called me one day, I'll never forget. He said, "Barry, there's a real mafioso, Jack Catane in Tarzana. The property is called Top of the Mark. His last name was Mark. His brother's name was Mark. The project Top of the Mark, it was a townhome community on Hatteras." And he goes, "He's got some carpet that needs to be fixed. Just go, but be careful." Well, in my mind, I'm thinking, mob, hey, they make loans.
Wait a minute, hold on here. Did your uncle really want you to just go fix this guy's carpet and that's it?
That's it. He was an accountant.
Okay.
That's it. Absolutely.
He wasn't trying to put you in business. No. Okay.
No, I was already in business. This is about 17 and a half, almost 18.
Or in business with him. He didn't want you to do that.
Right. Oh yeah. He did not want me. So he warned me. And so, but to me, all that was, like an old cash register, dollar signs in my eyes. I was just thinking, okay, mob lends money. I'll take it.
Holy cow.
Like banks were lining up to give me a dime.
Yeah.
So I go into Catane's house and he pulls out an article from the Herald Examiner, an old paper in LA that did a profile on me.
Right.
So he knew I was coming and we hit it off and he talked about Rusco Industries, New York Stock Exchange public company, used to be the CEO. They threw him out, so forth. And it wasn't
something about him being in the mob.
Yeah.
That's
and
probably why they threw him out. Yeah. Okay.
He goes, "You need financing for these restoration jobs." And they didn't exist, but he didn't know that. He thought I was just paying off an adjuster to do some inflated work.
Okay. So now you're lying to the mob. I mean, like first meeting.
That was the scary part. Yeah, that was the scary part because but you inoculate them by saying, no, listen. Look at in today how many restoration companies there are that do water. Okay. Back then, carpet cleaning companies, if you open the phone book, every one of them 24-hour emergency water damage. So I just said we were doing big buildings damaged by water or fire. And we had a great insurance relationship. And then I wink and a nod and we take care of him. So all Jack thought was kickback insurance. I get that. He wasn't even thinking the job wasn't phony. Same with the other mob families involved. I inoculated them that the restoration jobs were phony by insinuating that and outright saying that we had the adjusters on the take, giving him kickbacks. So it's all inflated. So I said to him, yes. And I'll never forget this. In a brown paper bag, I cannot mention the man's name because he just got out of prison and he's a big time mob guy in Boston to this day.
It's not Whitey Bulger,
no,
just so you know.
He's dead.
He's not. Yeah. This guy weighed about 300 pounds, but he was always good to me. It was amazing. $25,000 in a brown paper bag.
Yeah.
I never seen that much money in my life when I'm about 18. And $1,250 a week, interest only, 5 points a week. And he goes, I remember him saying, Barry, you paid a juice. You can have the money as long as you need. Just don't miss the weekly payment. So that was the financing I got initially. So $1,250 a week, interest only. And then I used to work for a carpet cleaning company in Mission Hills in the Valley. And Robert Vigiano owned a gas station, and he was super cool to me. I worked with him all the time, his son, and he called me in and he said, Barry, I hear you're with this guy. I think you need to know who I am. And he had a whole connection with Mangiapane and Lorenzo and the whole other family. And he said, we're going to rescue you from that family. You shouldn't be paying that much. Oh. So there was a big sit down in New York, and people were involved over me, who's going to control ZBest and get the free trading shares from the Pink Sheet merger deal that would later become public and be worth not 5 cents, but $18 a share. So it was a big deal.
Well,
so
I mean, listen, there's got to be some time between
there is
this guy loans you like $2,500 and
no, 25,000.
I mean, $25,000, and then you become a publicly traded. They can't envision
about
that.
a year and a half, about a year. So I get the 25 grand. I last for about 2 months with it. Vigiano calls me, says, we'll take you public. We'll get this paid off. He got us a loan at a company called JLB Equities in New Jersey for $2.1 million, $350,000 kickback to the owner. And that was a little bit better than 5 points a week. So they got financing. I was able to pay off the old debt. And then we merged with, back then, to your credit with the China Hustle.
The RTOs.
Back then, the Pink Sheets, right? All the China Hustle was sophisticated Pink Sheet play. This was Pink Sheet. So fully unreporting, but we merged with a Utah public company, took the free trading shares.
As a penny stock fraud does.
Right. And we split them up, 250,000 shares a pop at 5 cents. And they blew them out at 18 a share later on. So you're talking about a time period.
Man, these guys were happy with you, huh?
We're talking about the time of the 25,000 was, let's say, March 85. And I went public in January 86 with the, Pink Sheets, and then really public December 1986, Rudy Pace.
Right. So.
All accounting fraud.
Yeah, I mean, and the only people that got hurt were the investors in ZZZZ Best, right? And
actually, you know what? To the credit of not me, but we had a marvelous plaintiff's lawyer who testified in front of Judge Liu in federal court that the ZBest victims got 90 cents on the dollar. The only one pretty much that left holding the bag was Union Bank. I don't know why, but it was a $7 million.
Did they claw back the money from the mafia?
There was no, listen. If there was reachbacks then, like you see in the Madoff case, they weren't reaching back for these guys.
Well, I don't know how they got. Well, I mean, I don't know how did they get 90 cents on the dollar, because it sounds like
the plaintiff's lawyer did a great job settling with accountants, lawyers, other people that were complicit.
So the insurance companies of these.
That's right. But they made it. But no credit to me, although they said my help in walking them through victim recovery was beneficial. But I was glad about that. But still I paid Union Bank for like 15 years every month. From the day I got out of prison in 95 to when I went back in 2011, they finally dropped it. Hundreds of thousands. I took that very seriously.
And
I wasn't on probation.
Right. So like, look, you're at ZZZ Best. I mean, you have to, you're young. I saw something like you walked in the pre-IPO process. You've got like auditors checking, kicking tires, unlike today where they don't do any of that shit. But you walk them through a construction site at a building saying, I did this is my job. And it was nothing at all your job, right? You just
So it was the Sacramento, California, $7 million capital mall job. We said we had it on paper, and Rooney Pace, one of their executives, said, "Unless we get a tour on it, we're not funding this deal and going effective."
Yeah.
So the lawyers and accountants, and I made them sign NDAs, meaning you can't call Arthur Anderson, who was a tenant there. So that was a little scary. So,
holy, the balls on this guy.
so I tied him to NDAs. But you know what? And me and my co-conspirator at the time, we paid the guard $100 to recognize him. The night before, we put up signs. We told the building owner we're renting every space that's empty, and a lot of it was empty on every floor. And we just made it look like a just completed, because the percentage of completion method of accounting allowed us to recognize revenue by saying the job was done this much by this date, so we could recognize the profit and revenue. That was a great accounting trick.
Who taught you that? Who taught you that? You're 21.
I learned listen, I was, are you kidding me? I was 19 when I learned about the percentage of completion method of accounting. Believe me, I learned about, just like I learned about confirmations during an audit, and they mail them out and how to get ahead of them. Listen, I learned accounting because I couldn't pay the mob, which could mean my life, unless I got bank financing, public offering done. So when it's necessity, you learn very quick.
Survival.
Yeah, experience is a great teacher. So I had no idea what a financial statement was or anything like that until, you can't get money till you get a finance. So I found a guy who did phony financials, and he walked me through how to do it. And then I watched general ledger. We book entries here. We say they're categorized expenses here. We capitalize expenses a la WorldCom that aren't really supposed to be capitalized to make the balance sheet look stronger and the P&L look stronger.
Today. You don't have to go back to WorldCom. But go ahead.
That's right. And then fooling the auditors by staying one step ahead of listen, back then, you know what the irony was? We were check kiting to make all this revenue look like it came in, so we had other accounts. At the time, I used to do CPA training at state CPA societies when I got out of prison. I said, guys, you test the heck out of expenses. And today they probably do it because of technology, but I'm talking about 80s and 90s. I said, when was the last time you looked and tested for income, sampled income, like this $100,000 check that I said was for a restoration job? It was a check from my other account that you knew nothing about, an undisclosed account going through to make. I said, you got to check income. You don't do anything to check income. You see a deposit, we identify it, you accept it. So I always encourage them to dig deeper in accounting to be able to identify inflated.
And in that case, that was just your money in, your money out.
But it worked.
Yeah,
it worked. Mm-hmm. Plus, you had the float back then. You don't have the float anymore. No, these young kids don't know when you say check kiting. What the heck's that? Well,
there was a 3-day to a 1 week float.
Those were the days. Now,
where the check
now it's over.
Is cash, you get the money, but it's not actually cashed until it gets to the other bank, right? So you're and you're making payroll this way. I mean, before you're 18.
Freaking payroll, dude, payroll.
Yeah. Don't get me started. I got one of those.
Let me just tell you.
Wait, you pay people?
Shut your fucking face.
He's a hater, folks. He's a hater. Anyway, the issue is, I bet you I was sharing this with somebody I very much love and respect, and said, until you've had to meet payroll, you don't know what it's like to run a small business. There's no urgency at all. But when it's on the line that you got to do it, it'll mess with you. And I always tell small business people, listen to me, that responsibility is brutal. And it's nice being the boss. It's nice having autonomy, and it's great to strive for the American dream and entrepreneur. But I'm going to tell you that payroll has caused more than one person to do some crazy things.
Well, look, I only disagree with one thing you said there. You're right. Payroll, and having really financial responsibility over people's lives, and their families, meet their families, so it matters. And you even dip into your own personal, pocket to make it happen from time to time. I know I've done that. My former partner Maj had done that.
And somebody else's pocket, like my grandma's jewelry.
Well, no, I never did that. And Maj never did that.
I stole my grandma's jewelry out of her apartment, sold it for $300 when I was 16 or 17 to meet payroll. She never forgave me. Even I paid like $2,000 back to try to make it up. She's like, how could you do this? I'm like, well, I was a crook. I mean, what do you want me to do? Might have something to do with it.
Yeah. Well, look, I do disagree that like, it's nice being the boss or the autonomy or whatever. I'd much rather just take the paycheck, a nice big one, somebody else's responsibility, and let him go steal from his grandmother.
Yeah.
Because when grandma,
or we could share techniques of how to handle the pressure properly.
Yeah. Look, mental health is important. Not enough people in this profession, subscribe to that theory. I think it's important, but I mean, like, it's just got to be crazy for you. Like 10 years later, and grandma's like, I'm not having dinner with this guy.
It wasn't like that, but she didn't cut me out of the will.
She cut you out of the will?
Cut me out of the will. Wasn't
she should have left you the bracelet?
Yeah, no. She left me the area rug.
Yeah,
and it was dirty. Yeah, that was it. That was it. I got the dirty area rug.
Wow. I mean, listen, I think it arguably could last longer than the bracelet, but like, I mean, what? So now, when you talk about the first time you actually did something, with the check at Ben's place, you're just like, listen, I'm gonna put this back. It's gonna be fine. But, you're stealing your grandmother's bracelet now. You cannot be standing there doing that, being like, I'm a good guy. I've got a reason to do this.
No. But I was doing a good thing. I'm not a good guy, but the ends justify the means. Remember that. I mean, remember
because that was for payroll. You were stealing the bracelet for payroll?
Exactly right. Exactly. And I only got $300 at a pawn shop. I'll never forget it. I took the money, put it into California Federal Savings. I had an account at the time before they shut me down. It was, listen, nothing I'm proud of. And then it went to credit card fraud, because back then you could overcharge customers. We accepted MasterCard and Visa, but it was those machines, remember, like that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. So, these young kids are looking at that saying, why does he keep doing this? What does that mean? They're doing Apple Pay. They're doing Apple Pay with their iPhones. It's like, what does this guy mean with the machine, with MasterCard? Anyway, look it up online. But it took forever. The float was wonderful. 60 days before I would overcharge, get the credit the next day or two, and then they'd write the letter saying you overcharged. Oh, sorry, dishonest carpet cleaner. We'll send you a check, another 30. So it was a great float. So credit card fraud. And I remember getting caught. Banker called me in. California Overseas Bank. Never forget this. I was driving a Ferrari. I was 18. He goes, I got $100,000 in bad MasterCard Visa, and I'm going to call the police. I said, okay, you can do that. And you can explain to them, how an 18-year-old somehow did this, or do I look better as a victim? Tell you what, here's the pink slip to the car. Give me 30 days, 60 days, I'll have your loan paid, and we're good to go. Or you get to suffer through the embarrassment of being the guy that approved the account for the 18-year-old businessman to take your bank down for $100K. I'm saying it's a dishonest carpet cleaner. That kind of fits, doesn't it, for both of us? Here's the pink slip, good faith. I had the loan paid back in 45 days. He should have called the Secret Service right there and said, yeah, I can't be bought. You're a swindler. You're bad, and you always will be. Same thing happened at Charter Pacific Bank that Jack Catania introduced me to. I accidentally submitted 2 tax returns for the same year. So then Jim Volteric, I'll never forget, senior loan officer, calls me and said,
did they match?
No. Come on, if they matched, it would have been easy.
Yeah. Oh,
Mr. Minkow.
No.
So he goes, I got this 1983 tax return, and it's 2 of them, 2 different preparers. And he goes, this is like fraud. I said, oh, no, sir. See, here's what happened. I switched accountants. I don't remember which one was filed. I gave you both because I wasn't sure. I was just trying to be honest. He goes, oh, okay. That makes sense.
I mean, so and that was a call you were not expecting to get. You just thought of that.
I know, that was a meeting. I got called in. So I was like,
okay.
oh, no. I gave you both because I didn't know for sure, and I wanted you to have full disclosure.
Wow.
I don't know which one was filed, because back then you didn't have Form 4506 that quick. You couldn't check this stuff. You couldn't, listen, I told the IRS you could drive a truck through how they collect payroll taxes. One of the only cooperating things I did with the government when I got busted for ZBES was saying, guys, I can't cash a $5 check at Wells Fargo without them verifying funds. I'm not the only crook that takes payroll taxes, not only plays the float, but never pays them. And you really don't have a very good check system to see who's paying. Well, they got very good, not just because of me, but because of the rampant fraud. Now they know they collect ahead of time.
Yeah.
They know in 2 seconds you go to jail.
Yeah.
So, but then I was taking out taxes of people's check and putting them in my pocket, making up W-2s, never got caught because there was no system. So I exploited weaknesses in the system. Now today you couldn't do it.
No. So you got caught for some fraud, not all of it.
Well, no, I copped to all of it. It gets redundant after a while. I mean, the 57 counts. I'm like, even the judge was tired.
Yeah.
He was like, okay,
He's
do we have to read through this? He's like, it's over. We get it. I saw Judge Trevisan, by the way, at David Kenner's 80th birthday party. Snoop Dogg was there.
Uh-huh.
I was there, and Bo Bennett was there, and Judge Trevisan was there again. One of the night, he goes, Barry, I was so disappointed in you when you went back to prison for insider trading because you were doing so good in the fraud uncovery. And he looked at my wife, Lisa, and said, keep him in line or I'm going to kill him. Yeah. And he was great. He's a wonderful guy. He's retired now. He does, settlements for large civil cases. But another judge who I'm blessed to have had in my life who was pulling for me, who I let down when I went back to prison.
Some people meet a judge and just get their ass waxed, right away.
So here's the point. Here's the point to that. And please forgive me for interrupting. And this is what somebody taught me about handling haters.
Yeah.
They said, you live in a day and age where nobody gets indicted for anything hardly anymore. You could kill a cop. Correct. Sadly, you can burn down property. Yeah. He goes, here's the good thing about you, Barry. Both times you did white collar crime, the system worked. You were hammered. You didn't just go to jail with a slap on the wrist at some camp for 18 months. You got hammered both times. You did 15 years in federal prison.
Yeah, but it was 3 times. It was 3 times, wasn't it, Barry?
No, twice convicted because I never got out of prison. The San Diego case and the Miami case were charged differently so they can get more time out of me, but they occurred at the same time in one conspiracy. One checkbook. That's a big lie. Yeah.
So the Lennar case and the San Diego case was all one case?
Absolutely interlinked. We tried to force their hand and judge that we would have had to do what do they call a casting argument, some kind of hearing. We just said, no big deal because it was 5 years. Yeah, I was guilty. I wasn't pushing. But yes, it wasn't like I got out of Lennar and then did the church. Yeah. It all happened at the same time between 2000 and, according to the indictment, 2001, 2010, both cases, and then was arrested and did first the sentence for the Lennar and then the tax fraud commingling for the church. But it was all the same time period, same checking account, same office address, same everything, same use of proceeds. So it was no different. It was totally
But they're so different. Like the Lennar case, kind of appeals to me because I'm an activist short seller, so I kind of want to know how you fucked that up so bad, so I don't.
What was it? Paul Palladino, Jack Palladino represented, right? Clinton, and Paul was one of my best investigators. He's retired now. And to this day, he warns me, he says to me, I told you not to release the report. I told you we didn't have enough. I told you to be patient and not rush the report out. I didn't think I rushed it out. There's a whole story there. But I will say this. I was, the kind of techniques I used to gather evidence were hopelessly illegal. Whether the conclusions, because some argue even to this day, your conclusions were right. Listen, how I got them was completely illegal. Which I confessed, of course, to the U.S. attorney at the time.
Just briefly, how did you get them?
So hacking. I had a great computer guy, emails, internal, all illegal, horrible stuff.
So you hacked Lennar?
And not only that, most beneficial was I call it the whole Jim Rockford from the Rockford Files. Mm-hmm. It's you're pretending you're somebody you're not. And that was a big way we gathered information illegally in that case.
Look, that's not illegal, number one.
No, it is. When you call and say you're somebody else and you're not, and you're getting personal information about bank balances, debt.
Of course.
That's what I was doing.
But
we were going to.
I just have to point out that
the Billy Joe Meeker thing, we call it.
I will sit on a conference call from time to time and be quiet or ask a question, and my name is just Dan or whatever.
Mike Hunt.
Yeah, or Mike Hunt, right? Phil McCracken, whatever. But because, Barry, if I'm calling a CEO of a mid or a micro cap company, right? If it's Lennar, maybe he doesn't give a shit, right? But if I'm calling your CEO and your CFO, and Dan David wants to talk to you, what am I going to get? I'm going to get their dumbest PR guy flanked by their 10 smartest lawyers. asking me questions. So it's just not productive at all. So that's why we do have some employees as well that, like, you don't know their names publicly because they have to conduct the calls.
That's not illegal.
Yeah.
So, and even if you're listening in on that call, it's not. Yeah. It's a public company that owes the disclosures. But here's the thing. Stuart Miller, the CEO of Lennar, love the guy to this day because of what he did. The government wanted him to testify against me at my sentencing hearing and say a bunch of bad crap. And Alvin Enton, who just passed away a couple of years ago, was my criminal lawyer in Florida. We're in the Florida Miami courthouse cafeteria before the hearing. The lead counsel from Lennar and Stuart Miller came. And he said, you know, the government wants us to say this. We're not doing nothing. Mr. Minkow, you accepted responsibility. I wish you the best, you and your family.
I mean, seriously, Carl. I mean, here we go again with this guy. I mean, like, he's got the CEO of the company that he attacked.
But I admitted I was a liar. I mean, still,
listen. I got over 100 CEOs that want me dead.
Yeah, you're a financial terrorist.
You're not wrong.
You're the head of
you just got to be more wrong like me, and then they love you.
Short selling cabal.
Look, the one thing that you pointed out here, I'm just going to go back to selfishly is like, the person who is giving you that advice saying, look, man, it's not ready. The pain we go through with that, especially when you get 90% of the way there. But that last 10 matters the most.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Dave Pellegrinelli, who's still one of my best friends and investigators, 10 times smarter than me, also said, don't go with it.
Yeah.
And to this day, he still teases me because we work cases together and he's fantastic. And,
and most of that would have been freedom of speech if you didn't steal the shit. I mean, through hacking.
Right?
I mean, the only person I know that's been hacked is me and everybody else that works for me. And if it's not China, it's somebody else. And listen, at some point these days, I don't know how you can lose sleep over it at night. I mean, you do your best not to get hacked. You follow the protocols. You spend more money than most people. But like, look, I've told people on the show before, I've had the FBI call me, let me know, and then show up at my office afterward to tell me that I'm being monitored and surveilled by China. I mean, it's just, and then I'm asking them, what are you going to do to help me? Nothing. We'll take your computers and, whatever we find, because apparently there were some North Koreans involved. They bring them over the border, right? Into China, and they put them in a building like a sweatshop, and they have them do the hacking. And, on their important times, they'll hack government entities. And when it's not so important, they'll hack, Wolfpack or Geo-Investing. But this stuff happens. How did it enter your mind to do that? I mean, how did you do it? How did you do it? Would you put a disk in somebody's computer? Or
No. I had a fantastic guy.
It was an email set, right? That somebody opened an attachment?
No. I don't know. You know what? I was getting reports by the hour that night and some information, but they caught him like halfway through, but they had already entered into the system. Lennar asked about it. Lennar did when I pled guilty, Lennar did ask through the government. They were there. Did you do this? And I said, absolutely did that. That was us. And more than that. And also, disguise myself as your COO to get critical loan balance
when
information.
You're saying you disguise yourself, you're saying to be somebody with the company.
And then went to their banks and financial to get their...
Well, you understand.
It's called pretexting.
I totally had it confused. Because look, there are people that are anonymous in the work that we do because A, they don't want to be harassed. B, they have another job. They have a lot of different reasons they want to be anonymous. I never have been. So I've always used my name. But, they will call and say, listen, my name's Peter, Peter Pumpkin Eater, whatever. But they're not pretending to be with any public company of any kind. They're just like, they're not being themselves and asking about, the company's information that is public. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm calling Wells Fargo Bank saying, hi, I'm this officer of, and here's my social. And here's
that's
my
totally screwed up, bro. I mean, that is.
Oh, well, thank you to go ahead and jump on the bandwagon now. I don't know.
I've
done my, hey, back to the original point.
Yeah.
I've done my time. So it's like somebody could say, hey, I don't think Barry, he did this to the church. Hey, that's why I did 15 years.
Yeah.
So what, we're done with that. It's time to keep it moving. And what's going on now, right? So yeah.
Listen, I don't disagree with you.
And with somebody, I had a good friend who was formerly with the FBI. He said, Barry, if the feds wanted to shut you down forever, they should have given you a slap on the wrist for the Lennar thing, let it go, and nobody would have trusted you ever again, ever. But because you got hammered publicly, went to prison, now you can, say that's behind me and all good. And he was being complimentary, but he's saying the best thing he ever did was your 15 years, especially today when you could burn down a Wendy's and not even get probation.
Look, yeah. I disagree in the point that, like, I think if you did, in your own name, Barry Minkow, a well-researched report that was critical, and you put it out, I think people would take it serious. I would take it serious. I mean,
we do that with. I mean, we just wrote, I just submitted, and I'll send it to you. I would. A private equity fund that we think the whole Reg D market is a license to steal. And I'll get into that. Especially when the SEC lowered the requirements for what constitutes and qualifies. Mm-hmm. So you have these pool of victims. And you have these real estate crowdfunding deals where they're guaranteeing. And here's the problem. Here's what the SEC is afraid of. Dan, the $80 billion that the IRS got should have went to the SEC so that they could have lawyers that aren't afraid of the Big Ten that do these Reg D offerings that say this is a rat hole. If you invest it, you're hit. The small print that you're not going to make a dime, even though we're guaranteeing 14% or promising or alluding or whatever it is. And so they don't have the attorney depth. So if you have anything Reg D that has a big lawyer, they're not going up against them. The SEC's like, we'll wait till you implode. We'll let everybody lose their money. Yeah. Even in the NRIA case, which you now know is shut down, they took 2.5 years. And they knew it was a fraud, and they had the smoking gun, and forget about it. It's just they do not have they are outgunned, and perpetrators of fraud have no perception of detection and no perception of prosecution. And you can go online right now and look at a company called nydoz.com. Doesn't matter to you, they're not public. One day, 15% guaranteed return, next day, 20%. Here's what they're saying. The law enforcement, the SEC is a bunch of punk bees. I have another word for it from prison. They ain't going to do jack. They ain't going to do jack diddly. We're not even going to give you any proper nouns of who we are. We're going to do guaranteed returns, red flag. We're going to form in Wyoming and not let anybody know who we are. And you don't even get to know what it is we do to generate a guaranteed one day 15% annual return. The next day it's 20%, then it's back to 15. All over social media, Instagram, Facebook, talk about misinformation. The advertising campaigns at Facebook and Instagram as it relates to investment opportunities are the greatest of all misinformation.
It's the new boiler room.
But there's no money, Dan. Listen, no money in it. Listen, I know you got a model. Yeah. That ain't no money. It's a whistleblower thing with no assets, and I'll never make a dime. And by the way, and even lawyers, no deep pocket to pay. Nobody's interested. And believe me, the perpetrators know this. As much as they know the Reg D, the SEC doesn't have anything in the tank to put them down with their fraudulent offerings. Just in like manner, they know they're not going to get hit because they're hopelessly overwhelmed. Law enforcement, no perception.
Barry, why don't you just dropped that name on my show, so good for you.
And not only that, Zara Financial, another one, 3% a month guaranteed.
Well,
listen, I call them out. Call them out.
Oh, yeah, you want to call them out? I'm happy to have you do it. It bothers me not at all. I've never heard of them. But my question is, why don't you publish this stuff so people can digest it, can read it? We're going to follow in your great footsteps because you're a good example. Other than the hater next to you, right? Exactly.
Super hater. Anyway, we're going to do a podcast. I got me and the big homie from prison, but he's African American guy, weighs about 350. College football. I love doing undercover stuff with him because then I'm not afraid that they're going to kill me. They'll hit him first. Right. And he's a wonderful guy. So we're going to do a podcast called Fraud Factor, and this is the first to know is on this show.
Wow, and, Fraud Factor.
Produced by the same team that does some successful podcasts now. Came to us, great situation. And to your point, we can get a lot more education for especially the Gen Zers who are just like, hey, it's on Instagram. It must be legit, right? Just like, Barry's on Oprah Winfrey. Z-Best must be legit.
This is
the
old penny stock model. This is the old penny stock model. You just pump it through media and newsletters and whatever. So, but look, I mean, for my listeners who are upset that I interrupted Barry when he was dropping names, Barry, continue.
No, go listen. No,
listen. I mean, I think people want to know.
I've been on Zero Financial, guaranteed 3% a month, fake bank. The Journal's going to come out soon with some other fake bank schemes. I'll leave them nameless because I don't want to scoop. Okay. But the reports, over 3 years, I've submitted 5 reports on counterfeit banks, look like banks, offer rates that they compare to banks for deposits, have apps like banks. They're just not FDIC insured. And of course, they compare
that small thing.
And 5, 10, 50 times you get what the traditional bank will give you in terms of returns on deposit. So there's and they generate it through real estate loans, whatever. Don't need to bother you with that. Crypto lending too with Zero. I have that in writing in the report. But the point is this, 3% a month. Now, listen, what is it? I think Fidelity, $100 billion fund, what do they average? 7.2% a year, maybe. They're the smartest guys in the room, maybe Warren Buffett. These guys, 3% a month, guaranteed returns. So I've been after them. And you would think it would take the SEC about 3 minutes to do a TRO, shut them down. You would think. And I went to my connections at the SEC and said, Barry, it ain't 2008 anymore. We have to go through DC because of the whistleblower program. I said, I hereby waive any whistleblower fee on this heinous fraud that's stealing money from people. And I'm not tripping. Can't do it, Barry. Love you. We went to lunch. He's a great guy. He's a friend to this day. But he said, goes through DC and they don't do anything.
Holy cow.
So you got 3. So I went to the Better Business Bureau. They did something. I said, guys, you're giving an A+ rating to a Ponzi. Here's the reason. The next day they took it down. The FDIC last week issued a letter saying, I wrote the FDIC as well as the state federal regulators, and the FDIC acted. I write my buddy, I'll just say his first name is Ryan. He's in law enforcement at the enforcement division in California. I'm like, bro, really? And he goes, Barry, I'm sorry. You did great work here. I'm on it. I'm like, whatever. Okay, bro. So, I mean, they're just like, if it's me and you on a task force, all these things are shut down in 3 days and investment public isn't losing money. And we're not going to be wrong.
Yeah, no. No, I mean, look, what you've laid out, I've not heard of these companies and I have no idea
because they're not public and they're nuts.
What it is. But what you've laid out about these two companies is, at face value, is 5 minutes of detection you're a fraud.
Exactly.
I mean,
that's why I didn't mention the other names of other companies that is a little more complicated. I wouldn't do that and give them the benefit of the doubt always. No, I'm not a hater.
Yeah.
But these guys, when it's blatant securities fraud where every red flag from state regulators they're hitting and the regulators don't act, don't put the red flags on your portals, on your state websites if you don't give a rip when you see them.
Right. Right.
Listen, but here's the test. Ready?
Yeah.
This one, even the hater next to you is going to like, Carl. Listen, if Barry Minkow was running Zero Financial, if Barry Minkow was running NYDOZ.com,
it'd be done today.
It'd be shut down. Yeah.
They'd pull in agents for overtime. Yeah. They'd be drawing straws. Let me get them.
On you like
and
right on
right every time about me. I'm not.
Well, that's why they're like, Barry Minkow, I'm in.
They're betting 1,000 with me.
I'm going to make an arrest here. I mean, the odds are with me. But look, I mean, hey, still, look, you've done some good things in life, and we shouldn't not talk about those. I mean, like, you've helped the SEC, you've helped PCOB, you've helped the FBI. During that time, you've made mistakes, but now you're back out, and you, like you said, I mean, you've done 15 years. It's not like you got away with it, and now you've evolved into something very different in a very timely way. It's like you've really sniffed out where most of the fraud is right now. And because it is in private equity and it is in these obscure vehicles that don't trade, because you have, arguably a lot more disclosures on trading vehicles.
Right.
There's a lot of money to be made there too.
Dan, Carl, listen to this because this is brilliant that he just brought up. That's the point. Yeah. If I'm a crook today, here's what I'm doing. Yeah. No audited financials.
Right.
Reg D offerings, accredited investors exempts them. I don't need to tour anybody on restoration buildings because I don't need audits. I don't need clean opinions. I don't need cold comfort letters from lawyers. I don't need 3 years audited financials like an S1 registration statement. I can get as much money as I need by lying about what you're going to make. Now, here's what I caught. Because what inevitably comes back, and the objection is, Barry, in the small print, they say 13, 18% a year, but they say targeted. So you lose. I said, oh, really? So how about last year's earnings? Now they're historical, they're testable, and they're lying about those. They're built on Ponzi, and those don't exist. So I went after the historical, not the promised.
Smart. Yeah, that's smart. I mean, like, I don't know if they get away with targeted either. If a hostile regulator that really wants to do their job goes after them. But the historical, you can't wiggle out of it. You can't wiggle out of it.
That's right. That's right. And Craig McCain has done some great work. He's a former SEC higher up, and he was one of the experts I used, 10 times smarter than me. And he caught something in my last report. He's like, Barry, why didn't you mention the fact that this particular entity doesn't even buy their properties at a discount? They pay triple retail. And yet in an inflationary market with interest rates, they're going to achieve these record returns that they were 3 years ago when interest rates were. He goes, you missed it. I said, brother, you have no idea the depth of my incompetence. Just hang around me long enough.
Was that company B. Riley? I'm just wondering. I'm just asking a question here.
B. Riley,
I can't be the only one looking at it. The valuation game with companies like, withstanding any companies we talked about here today is just amazing that you take minority stakes in something and then you start, valuing it, up 100% within 3 years, especially if it's not a level 1 asset and you don't have that kind of accounting. You got, level 2 or level 3, God forbid, level 3, the price is whatever you say it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. So, and how many whistleblowers have you done since you've been out? And you've been out since 2019?
I got out in December 2018. We got 13 submitted cases. 4 have been shut down already.
Shut down. And you don't think you're going to get paid on those companies?
Oh, hell no. And you're talking about a fraud. Listen, I'm going to take Bloomberg. Yeah. Don't believe me.
No, you know how many whistleblowers I have turned in? You're not going to have to convince me, pal. Preach. Go ahead. Preach, brother.
Listen, Bloomberg did a great article on the corruption of the whistleblower program. Yeah. Listen, the program started in 2011, 2012. All the lawyers who started the program 3, 4, 5 years later.
Practice, yeah.
And then they call their old buddies back to take the cases. So it's a cherry picking of cases. It's deplorable.
Hey Barry, why don't you be quiet? Because one of those is my lawyers now.
I
read the article too, and I called one of those lawyers right away.
They wouldn't even. I brought in the 5 no, you're Barry Minkow. I'm not going to represent you. What do you mean you won't represent me? You're a whistleblower lawyer. I go, it's like going to Wells Fargo. They say, we can't open an account for you. I'm like, you guys are bigger crooks than I ever was, and you're not going to open my account?
To this day, they're bigger crooks.
Oh, my God.
These guys, but your problem was to begin with, you didn't steal enough money. You could have just paid a fine if you did.
Yeah.
They've proven that over the last 20 years that, if you steal enough money, you're just going to pay. Yeah. I mean, the SEC can't afford to fight you if you're going to throw $250 million at a defense. They just can't.
It's not just the deterrent. Also, seriously, is and why you guys are so relevant more now than ever before is not only are the SEC lawyers going to practices that are going to represent these public companies,
they go to white collar firms to come after me too.
Right, and then you have the problem of the lack of talent and depth to take on these Reg D filings that are trash, that are pits, that are frauds for all kinds of reasons. But because this is a fully disclosed fraud, it's not, we can't prosecute.
No, they're fantastic at the postmortem.
Yeah. They wait for the thing to implode and they do the cleanup work, and that's all they're going to do.
But really, my experience has been a lot of it, look, quite frankly, a lot of it is budgetary. I mean, they just.
So give the $80 billion you gave to the IRS. Am I the only one screaming that the $80 billion should have went to the SEC, not the IRS?
I don't.
We would have got great ROI.
Look, I don't disagree with you. And $80 billion. I mean, or at least you could have split it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if the IRS is going to get the $80 billion in the end. But I would argue that it's even more important for the SEC because, some of these crimes, Barry, you're looking at some of these companies and you're seeing even today, right now, that your little $300 million market cap fraud was peanuts. Nothing.
You're a micro cap.
Nothing. Yeah, nano cap. I mean, these guys are billions, and private equity too that you're looking at, or hedge funds, they're in the billions now. Is that right?
No, there's no question. And that is the reason, as you said, that the deep pocket fear that the SEC litigation enforcement division has of going up against big, they got their butts kicked a couple times on even
the Cuban thing was bad.
And what happened with even when they tried to regulate the whole cryptocurrency thing, they had some setbacks on the low-hanging fruit, obvious security.
Oh, they're nowhere near done with that. I think they just, I had Commissioner Hester Peirce on our show like 6-7 months ago, and she was alluding to the SEC jumping in, and I think that was just October of last year, where they officially said, "Hey, everybody else, screw off," because prior to that, every government agency thought they had control over cryptocurrency.
That's right.
Everybody thought that cryptocurrency should report to them. The SEC, the DOJ, the PCAOB, the whatever. So they're behind. They're very behind. And the Sam Blankman-Fried is, and how many of those are out there, Barry, do you think in the crypto world?
Well, no. Listen, I'm going to tell you this. You're going to say you're lying, and I'll send you the documents. I have a filed whistleblower complaint, and a reporter told me this because he read it. April 2021, one of my counterfeit bank scheme reports where I said BlockFi, their lending program is a fraud. And my buddy goes, if you would have just added BlockFi to the list, you might have had your first paying whistleblower account. But I spelled it out, said, just as you have no understanding of how this return is being generated, this 8%, 9% return crypto lending, what is it? Who is it to? How do I get my arms around it? Same with the counterfeit bank frauds. What trust deed? What's the address? What's my position? What's the LTV? What's the interest rate? What's the credit score? None of it. You're not allowed any of it. So whenever there's a wall erected between the passive investor and evidence of independent proof of profitability. Mm-hmm. BlockFi didn't have it. Their audited financials didn't show anything to do with crypto lending's profitability over a sustained period of time. Mm-hmm. Certainly these bank fraud counterfeit ones don't have audits, or at least I couldn't get them. Not for lack of trying, and not illegal act of trying, just legally trying to get them. Let the record, because the hater next to you is like, Carl's like, yeah, he probably hacked and did this. I'm over it.
Oh, no. Listen, man, if you did that again, listen, the guy I'm talking to today just cannot possibly be that dumb.
Yeah, my boss just told me that.
I mean, maybe that's what people said after the first one, but like the hacking thing, that's kind of how you got caught last time. And Lennar really did catch on to it. It's just so many other things.
To their credit, they did. And and
leave that to foreign agents. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're right.
And besides, what you're doing right now is like, it's got to be intellectually stimulating. I can tell from talking to you, you're just like sharp as a whip on this stuff, especially the stuff you've done the research on. I can't see why you can't monetize it. I mean, look, I monetize my ideas. There's no doubt about that. But I also turn in a whistleblower when appropriate. And, in one sense, yeah, right. I'm probably not getting paid on the latter, but I'm getting paid on the former. I mean, I think, if you could be trusted again, if somebody can do that, you could really add value to these investigations. And it's like Abraham Lincoln said. I mean, the only way, if you trust somebody is to trust them, right?
Yeah, well, I think there's a little difference.
Or was that James Conn?
Right.
Same guy, right? Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think the challenge, in my life, Lisa and I were just talking about this, I'll be 57 in, a couple of weeks.
And how long have you been with Lisa?
Well, so listen to this. So we were married in February of 2022. And when I went to prison, now this is Lisa, and I just tell her story. She did not care about, $600 million insider trading charge. She cared that she found out that I had an affair with my assistant, and that was the end of the marriage. So,
well, listen, you should have led with that. Of course, it is.
Yeah, that was it. So, but she was great. She, the boys moved. They stayed in LA when I got out. They would come visit, and listen. Here's what happened. We won. We got sued by some of the public companies. I won every lawsuit. Metafast, USANA.
Yeah. You did USANA and Metafast?
Yeah,
they suck.
I won, and they but I did. That was back then.
USANA was China.
And we have never mind. I can't talk about it. But anyway, I'll only tell you a public record. We settled with Metafast after we won the appeal. While I was in federal prison, they thought, he's going to be in prison. No judge is going to, no Ninth Circuit. We won. So
you got nothing in time in prison, and it sounds like you could be your own lawyer.
No. I had great lawyers. I didn't get involved in civil stuff. They were fantastic. The insurance company was paying them. We did great. So the point was this. I got a little, we settled with something, and I gave, a large portion to Lisa while we were divorced, and it wasn't a part of the agreement. And that kind of this guy used to have problems with money, and he kind of gave this, and that kind of helps, and started giving the boys the allowance. They started visiting more. So when I got out in 2018, we were remarried by November of 2019. And we give God the credit for that. We make no apologies for being Christians. And we believe God kind of brought our family back together. So I got the twins and Lisa, and the boys are going to be 20.
And how long have you and Lisa been together? I mean,
so it would be 20. We got divorced in 13, but she didn't remarry or have any.
And you were originally married when? Like in the 90s, right?
February 2002.
Okay. Wow. So I mean, it's been a long time. I mean, she's stuck with you. I mean, through
she's
a lot.
Fantastic. Yeah,
It's funny. And the affair is the thing that,
that was it. I don't care about $600 million.
Yeah. I think
and she
my wife would totally agree.
The point is that at this stage, you get to the point in your life where you lose the motivation for things kind of become clear. And for me, Dan, you see it all the time with CEOs and executives, that when you find yourself climbing that ladder to the top and you get there, you realize it's leaning against the wrong wall, and you realize too late, because there's a lot of dead bodies up those stairs, and compromises and people you've sacrificed, including your family, with the hours and workload. So I really, there was a great movie we saw in prison, and it was on movie night, and believe it or not, it was
Shawshank Redemption.
No,
I wouldn't watch that in prison either.
There was a guy. It was a fantastic movie. The guy used to play Hercules. It was and
The Rock. Lou Ferrigno.
I'll remember in a minute.
Okay.
But anyway, the scene was this: an old guy, cantankerous, 89-year-old, very wealthy, but no friends, no family, is dying in a hospital. Nobody visits him. And this guy, it's kind of like he goes back and he sees that's where I'm headed. So it's kind of an aha moment for him. And he said, he's pitching him on the eternal life thing. And the old man looks at him and says this, and I'll never forget this. He goes, but you don't understand. I've done things. And it just kind of hangs there. And I look back on my life at Z-Best and betraying a position of trust at the church, and leaving my kids when they were 8 and coming back when they were 15. And I'm still dealing with, I love my kids. They love me. I'm grateful, but I could see the irreparable damage of a fatherless home during those critical years, all because of me. And I just heard that man say, I've done things, lied to people to get money, Everybody who's ever been in prison for a white collar crime lied to get money, and it takes different forms. But, Dan, the truth about Barry Minkow is I've done things, and I'm grateful for forgiveness and redemption and another chance with my family. And coming to grips with the fact that the truth about me is I'm a very deceptive human being, and always got to be keenly aware of that. And
that's very insightful. Because I mean, really, I was going to ask you the question. I mean, in all the things I've seen in interviews and people have talked to you, and everybody's fond of you. Look, I could have this conversation. I find you fascinating. But do you think? Because a lot of these people say, but there's a but there, but there's a deception behind it. I'm not necessarily seeing it. I don't know that I need to, But do you think you see yourself the same way other people see you?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I'm so glad you said that. Derek Berg, Google him. He's on the run in Brazil, $100 million Ponzi scheme, Seattle. I was the last person to see him in Atwater before he escaped on a jet to the Atwater Airport right next to us. Most wanted in the country, I think. Look him up. Derek Frederick Berg, B-E-R-G.
Thanks for spelling it for Carl.
Yeah, see, and I'll never forget what he said to me. I loved the guy. He was brilliant. He was difficult to get along with, but he's told me something that I'll never forget. He said, Barry, here's your problem. You live in a fantasy world. You see people as you want them to be, and I see people as they really are. And that huge disconnect is going to break your heart. The good news for me, and I never really forgot that, the good news is I'm not putting myself in a position where I have to meet payroll anymore, Dan. So I'm not going to worry too much about lying to get money. So I avoid situations that economic pressure would cause as such. I mean, we're even making a move cross state out of California into Nevada to lower expenses. And that's what we're doing. So I just think if I can avoid the traps of, violating the position of trust. But listen,
I mean, I think you're coming at this correctly as from the point of view of an addict. Who doesn't? And I was OxyContin, and by the way, well, not just a drug addict, but like there are mental addictions, and you seem to be conscious of some mental addictions that you may have, and just staying away from them so they don't cause you the same problems.
And the other thing is, listen, either I believe my faith or I don't. I remember somebody say, I really love your preaching. I just wish you believed it.
No,
they were being very kind about it. They were saying, listen,
it sounds like a kick in the balls to me.
It was a wonderful wake-up call. It's like, do you really believe that that God can change your life and take somebody who's a lying manipulator, like in the Bible, Zacchaeus, white-collar criminal, Jacob, liar, that's what his name means in Hebrew, and change him? And I was stuck with that. And it was in this bit in prison in Lexington. John Whitfield, former judge, did the wedding for Lisa and I. He's a senior pastor in the African-American community, brilliant guy in Mississippi, a dear friend to this day, huge impact on my life. And then I went to Atwater and really was impacted by several people there who I was able, and here's the thing, in prison, you can be transparent. Nobody's going to judge you. You're all wearing brown or green or whatever the uniform is. So you could say, something, I lied to the boss today at work because he caught me not doing work and I feel bad about it. Nobody's going to say, out here in the real world, you know how hard it is to find people that you could be transparent with and say, listen, I'm really no good. My schedule's off. I'm short with people. I was deceptive here. I wasn't honest here. Those relationships that I cultivated in prison were precious in regard to being able to have those kind of relationships. And I still have them to this day.
Well, look, this is not a unique problem for you. I mean, like as we get older, right? You get in your 50s, you get in your 60s, 70s, 40s, really. It's harder to make relationships because like the people who know you from your 20s and 30s, they know you're an asshole and they've accepted you. Mm-hmm. And you're probably not willing to put it out there. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. As you get older, because you don't want their asshole baggage either, right? So it's just, it's just easier to have that circle of friends. I've got a great deal of them that are 30, 40 years old. I've got a handful that are last 10, 15 years, and very, very few of the recent 5 or 10. I don't know if it's the same with you, but that you can really have that conversation with and say, I'm going to be honest with you here. This is how I'm feeling, or this is how I view things. It's harder and harder, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think for me, and the kids will do this for you. Perfect example is training and diet for me. Like I came.
Yeah, you're an in shape dude.
No.
You're always in shape. You're still in shape. You got to
hear this.
Yeah,
Carl. You know what I weighed when I got out of prison, knowing I was going home. I just ate everything, and we were in the halfway house.
We saw you. You were as big as a house. I mean, but you were muscular.
240. Well, it was a lot of fat. So when I came to the boys, you know how I won over my boys, not with any one talk, but 361 straight days of diet and training. And then they're like, now we're 5 years into it. And the boys are like, my dad's a machine. This is what he does.
Yeah.
He does what he says. And not because he says it, but I've watched him. And so you earn it by your actions with the family, right? Still have a lot to work to do to be a better husband, a little more sensitive, because like me, Lisa, like processes. I'm like, let's keep it moving, honey. Let's move. Well, that's you, Barry, but I need to stop and process. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll give you like 10 minutes. Come on, let's go. I'm very insensitive emotionally.
Barry, you owe her. You need to slow down. You owe her.
I know. I do. She's terrific. So, but yeah, a lot to learn. But I'll tell you what, here's what I tell everybody as we close. We did our demo for our podcast. Always the close is this.
Yeah.
It ain't over. It ain't over.
No, it ain't over.
No matter where you are in your life, no matter what you're going through, what you did, it ain't over. Don't listen to the haters, Carl. Yeah, it ain't over.
Look, I think you're fascinating. I'm gonna listen to your show, and look, as I've said, I'd listen to you. I mean, you've called me, I've talked to you before, and I do listen to you. I could see the quality in your work right away. I, of course, have nothing to do with it because you have your own business and you have your own model, and you're doing great. But it's superior work, and if somebody really wanted to pay attention to that, they probably would be rewarded in it. So I think your show's going to do well. I don't know how they can economically benefit from some of these private equity frauds or hedge funds frauds unless they're directly in it. But a lot of people don't know that they're invested in private equity through their public vehicle anyway.
That's a great point. Not even I pointed that out. That's a great point.
Well, gee, Barry, if you didn't point it out, it must be.
I should have. No, but I should have known that. I'm on that topic. That's a great point.
Yeah,
that's the learning moment right now. No. Look, I mean, people should listen to your.
Quick to prounce on my ignorance.
No. We had a guest in one of our very first podcasts who was like, people come back and listen if they learn something, right? So you always have to give them one thing that they learn from the podcast.
Okay, if you learn anything, learn this. Carl doesn't pounce; he prances. And then he topples over.
Well, you do well in prison, Carl, with the prance.
No, I'm back to it. Like, look, you've been a great guest. I'd love to have you back when your show is launching and talk about that. Talk to your friend. What was his name? I know he's a big black fellow that's 350 pounds.
Can't lose. Yeah, you know what?
No, he goes by the name Big Homie. Really? Those are parents that don't love him.
Mr. Lewis.
Okay, Mr. Lewis.
By the way, he's a traitor. He's lost everybody's money, mine, his mom's, everything. But
I can see where you guys met.
Yeah. But he's a fully disclosed fraud. I tell him that all the time.
Look, the show sounds better and better. I'd like to have you both when you're, for 15, 20 minutes before you do your show.
Yeah.
And look, I'm going to tell you what you already know just to end it. Yes, it ain't over, but be careful, Barry. I mean, once, twice is 15 years, and it's a terrible price to pay for everybody. A third time is going to be a life killer for a lot of people. And be careful with the show too, because like if you do what I do and you're dropping names, you're getting sued. I mean, I haven't gotten sued this week, but I'm looking forward to it next week or the week after. It's not an easy gig. And you fought it. You've been there. You won every one. So have I. But it's part of the game, so prepare for it.
Except Lennar, we did lose that one. Full disclosure.
Well, I mean,
we got our butts kicked there, but it was good. And Petrocelli was the lawyer. He ended up being a good guy. So, what am I going to tell you? But we did lose.
Well, that was part of the first part of the advice. Like, be careful, meaning don't commit a crime. That's why you lost Lennar.
I had a little vulnerability there. A little vulnerability.
Do you have any parting words for our audience? Like, feel free to riff on what you're doing. If you still want to talk about that for a minute, feel free to talk about your faith. Feel free to talk about, your future, your podcast, whatever.
You know what? Let me close with something I thought was very interesting. And I thank you for that opportunity. I'm not going to preach at anybody, but I remember something that was very hopeful. And we live in a world today where hope is much needed. I'll never forget when I was on my way to prison in the ZZZZ case. My mom I come from a Jewish family, both parents Jewish, the whole family Jewish, bar mitzvah, 8 years of Hebrew school, all that. And my mom became what we would call a messianic Jew, a Jew who believes that Christ was Savior. And she ended up leading the whole family, except don't know about dad, but certainly me and my sisters, to that worldview. I'll never forget, she goes, Barry, I know you're not going to talk to me about all the crap that went on at the company, but I have somebody I want you to talk to, a longtime family friend. I go and sit in her house in North Hollywood. I'll never forget this. I'm on my way to prison, 60 minutes. Remember, I'm the OJ of 1988. I mean, I was everywhere.
You've been, listen, if anybody wants to search it, you've done 60 Minutes, 2020.
Police Lennar, twice
bro, you were on Oprah. Like, you've landed.
Twice. She was mad at me. I don't think she's forgiven me yet. I don't know.
Don't worry about her. She lies about Weight Watchers. Go ahead.
So, and I lied about the carpet. So the lady looks at me and she said, Barry, I just want to tell you something. If you died right now, where would you spend eternity? And I wasn't even thinking about that. She goes, I got good news for you. She goes, what if I were to tell you that good people don't go to heaven? Forgiven people go to heaven because everybody lives forever somewhere. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, you grew up Jewish. And she goes, listen, you do your mitzvahs, the 10 commandments, and good people go. It's kind of that view. Kind of the same, and no Muslim scholar would argue with the good people go with the 5 pillars of Islam. Whether you're Sunni or Shiite, good people go. Even in Buddhism and Hinduism, good people go, moksha, nirvana, reincarnation. She goes, but I got good news for you. I have a worldview where good people don't go to heaven. Forgiven people go to heaven because everybody lives forever somewhere. And she goes, that's the Christian worldview. And Christ is on the cross ready to die. The guy next to him never was bar mitzvah, never got baptized, but acknowledged who he was and that he was a sinner in his belief in Christ. He said, today you're going to be in heaven.
Oh, you talking Barabbas? He was a rapist.
No, the guy on the cross next to him.
The thief.
So,
the thief.
The thief of the cross. Yeah. Very good. Carl, my God, you came through. I knew it would happen. There'd be a breakthrough moment.
All my money goes to the Catholic Church, but I don't go. My wife does every Sunday.
So that resonates. Listen, when you're a crook, a liar, and a thief, and you have somebody saying to me, you can get forgiven despite even what Barry Minkow did, that was huge. So good people don't go, forgiven people go, everybody lives forever somewhere. I said, I like that. She goes, that's what separates Christianity from every other world religion. I'm not being a hater about other world religions. I'm just saying the distinctive. Good people.
I like
forgiven people. And I loved it. That was all. So that was life-changing. So for me, that's why I always say it ain't over. Hang in there. I know it's tough. What you're going through, these times are tough, but it ain't over. Don't believe the haters. You can do it. And me, big homie, and even Carl are pulling for you. Dan for sure. Dan for sure. You got Dan. Dan's automatic. Yeah, Carl's not so much.
Yeah, I mean, look, Barry, you have to forgive yourself first. I'm sure she meant that, and she told you that you have to forgive yourself first. Nobody else can forgive you if you don't. And if they don't, then live your best life with your sons, your wife, and the work you do. Continue to educate people. I think if anybody listened to this show, or both the people that do, are going to learn something from you. And, I wish you the best. I mean, look, you didn't get away with it. I can do that. I can do that, and I can forgive. I wasn't stolen from. But I can say, like, this guy deserves a chance at society again, because that's the society we built. You break the law, you go to jail, you pay your penance, you get out, and we're supposed to give you the opportunity to succeed again. Trust is going to be hard to build for you, but I got to tell you, I'll say this again to my listeners. If you look at this guy's work, I mean, when I started out the show saying if somebody described you as a master criminal, that's not always, the pejorative that it seems, because you are the one that can catch the master criminal. Like, not many of us can. It's really more of a talent than you give yourself credit for. So, keep plugging away at that. I think that's God's work. That's my opinion.
Appreciate you.
And we'll see about your show.
And we'll come back with the big homie. That'll be a lot of fun.
I think the big homie would be great.
Love Carl. He's going to love Carl.
Do you have social media, Twitter that you want to plug?
We got the Fraud Factor POD, I think, but it's just launching. So we're doing, so it's a little premature, but you're the first to know. That's what you want, the insider info. I'm giving it to you. Well, before the public knows anybody.
First of all, I've never asked for insider info in my entire life. Let's go on record as saying that. And no, I didn't. But like if you do, before we air the show, because we tape this, we edit it, for all the ums and ahs and insults at Carl that Carl tries to take out without me noticing. If you get a Twitter handle, give it to us, because I mean, I think that's a good way to promote your show and any of your other social media. I
think we have the Twitter handle, so I'll get with Carl offline and
you've been a great guest. I'd love to have you back, and we're all rooting for your success, because, like, look, we know what failure looks like. I mean, and nobody wants to be in that position, and neither do you.
You guys are the best. Appreciate you so much. Thank you for having me, and have a great night.
I look forward to speaking to you offline, Barry, and knowing you personally.
Whenever you need me, I'm here for you.
All right.
If you hear him howling around your kitchen,